Welcome to the Chapter 2 lecture on economic models, trade-offs, and trade. In this chapter, we will develop our first two models. It is important to note the role of assumptions in this course. Economists make use of many assumptions, some of which are extreme and artificial. The real world is far too complex for us to explain right now, so we are going to make assumptions so we can simplify a complex problem and make it easier to understand. Economists assume that people are rational and markets are perfectly competitive. Model 1 is the production possibilities frontier. This is a simple model, but its purpose is to illustrate several key economic concepts like scarcity, opportunity cost, trade-offs, and economic growth. The production possibilities frontier, or PPF for short, is a graph that shows various combinations of output that an economy can produce. Again, we start off with assumptions because we cannot analyze the real world right now since it is too complex. We will assume that the economy is experiencing full employment, meaning all available resources are being used. Fixed resources means the quantity and quality of resources are fixed. Remember, resources are land, labor, and capital. Fixed technology means the state of technology is fixed. This allows us to look at a snapshot in time. Lastly, we assume the economy is only producing two goods. I'm going to work through an example using robots and pizza. This example is different than your textbook. Let's start with a table of data. Here we can see the production alternatives in producing pizza and robots. I'm going to use simple numbers like 1, 2, and 3. But you can think of pizzas in hundreds of thousands and robots in the thousands to make this example more realistic. At production alternative A, the economy is going to use all of its resources in the production of robots. The economy will produce 10 robots and 0 pizza. At production alternative B, the economy will move some resources over to make pizzas. The economy will produce 1 pizza and 9 robots. At production alternative C and D, more resources are moved to the production of pizza. At C, 2 pizzas and 7 robots are produced. At D, 3 pizzas, 4 robots are produced. Although it is not shown on the screen, there is also production alternative E, in which the economy will produce 4 pizzas and 0 robots. Let's put our data onto the diagram. We will have a vertical axis labeled robots and a horizontal axis labeled pizza. By mapping out each of our points A, B, C, and D, we get the production possibilities curve. The area outside the curve is not feasible because the economy does not have the resources or technology to produce beyond the curve. The area inside the curve is inefficient because the economy does have the resources and technology to produce more, but is not using those resources to their fullest capacity. Each point along the curve represents the maximum combination of the two products. Therefore, each point along the curve is considered to be efficient. As I already mentioned, points inside the curve are inefficient because they are attainable but less desirable. Points outside the curve are unattainable or not feasible. The slope of the PPF is opportunity cost. Let's go back to the diagram to see exactly how the slope illustrates opportunity cost. Remember, slope is rise over run. However, we are working with a negative curve, so we are looking at fall over run. Moving from points A to B, the economy gives up producing 1 robot, the fall, and gets 1 pizza, the run. In economic words, we can say the opportunity cost of 1 pizza is 1 robot because 1 robot is what is given up in order to produce 1 pizza. Next, moving from point B to C, the economy gives up 2 robots, 9 down to 7, and gets 1 pizza. In economic words, we can say the opportunity cost of 1 pizza is 2 robots because 2 robots were given up in order to produce 1 pizza. Moving from point C to D, 3 robots are given up, 7 down to 4, however 1 pizza is produced. The opportunity cost of 1 pizza is now 3 robots. Moving from point D to E, 4 robots are given up. However, 1 pizza is produced. The opportunity cost of 1 pizza is now 4 robots. You can see that opportunity cost increases as we move from point A to B, B to C, C to D, and D to E. The increase in opportunity cost has a special name. The law of increasing opportunity cost tells us that as the production of a particular good increases, in our case pizza, the opportunity cost of producing additional units rise. More robots must be given up. The rationale for the law of increasing opportunity cost is specialized resources. Some resources are specialized in the production of certain goods. Think about cheese and pepperoni. Those are resources needed to make pizza, not robots. The law of increasing opportunity cost explains why the PPF has a bowed out or concave shape. Most production possibility frontiers will be drawn with a curve bowed. Lastly, the PPF can be used to illustrate economic growth by allowing for an increase in the quantity or quality of resources or a change in technology. Anytime there is economic growth, the PPF will shift outward. The area under the curve, the area that is attainable, will increase, showing more robots and more pizza being produced. Model 2 is the circular flow diagram. It is a very general model used to describe how the economy is organized and how participants interact with each other. Since the real world is very complex, we must first start with a list of assumptions. First, we are going to assume there are only 2 decision makers in the economy, firms and households. This means we have completely cut out the government sector. Next, we are going to assume that there are only 2 markets, the market for goods and services, the finished products, and the market for factors of production, the raw resources. We will assume that households own and sell all of the factors of production, households buy and consume all the goods and services, firms hire and use the factors of production, and firms produce and sell all the goods and services. You can follow along in your textbook as I explain the circular flow diagram in detail. However, my diagram is slightly different than the textbook. We start off with the households on the right and firms on the left. First, I'm going to explain how our 2 participants interact in the market for the factors of production. Since the households own all the economic resources, they are going to take those resources to the market for the factors of production and sell them to the firm. The only difference between the 2 flow lines is ownership. The land, labor, and capital flow line is under ownership of the household. Exchange of ownership occurs in the market. The factors of production flow line is under ownership of the firm. Now, firms don't get things for free, they must pay for them. Therefore, we have money flowing in the opposite direction. Wages, rents, and profits from the firm to the market, and then to the household in the form of income. Both flow lines represent the same pile of cash. The difference between the 2 lines is ownership. The wages, rent, profits flow line represents cash in the firm's hands. The income flow line represents cash in the household's hands. Next, let's look at how participants interact in the market for goods and services. Since the households now have income, they're going to spend it in the market for goods and services by buying finished products. The money then flows to the firm as revenue. Firms provide goods and services for sale and households buy the goods and services. Again, each flow line is the same. The only difference between the right and left side is ownership. This is the end of the Chapter 2 lecture. If you have any questions about the concepts covered in this chapter, please post a question in the Ask Professor Pakula discussion board.